this room is lovely.
Do you want the lights on?
No, this is perfect. So thank you for inviting me into your private sitting room in the castle. And in the castle. And so I just, I want to ask, you've lived in the castle for how many years?
I've been here since I'm married, which is 53 years ago. I think 67 anyway. I came here.
Right.
1967, yes.
Yes. And did you, when you moved here, did you know what was expected and what your plans were? No.
I mean, when you're 20-something, admittedly late 20-something, you take anything on, really, don't you?
Yes.
And people would say to me, what's it like having a baby here? And I said, well, I've never had one anywhere else. First baby, that was Charles.
Yes.
So he caused a bit of a stir because he was the first baby to be born here since Mary Cole had all her 7 children.
Oh my goodness.
And so 200 years gap
yes.
between her and me, as it were. So that caused a little bit of a...
It's a good story.
Yes,
it's a very good story. So you've raised 2 boys here, raised your family here, at the same time having the public come.
Yeah.
And what was that like all these years?
Well, I hadn't known life sort of without it, really, had I?
Yes.
And they were an awful nuisance, though, when, a lot of people around when you've got 2 babies, and they were both babies together.
Yes, 11 months apart.
And I had 2 dogs, and we had to sort of, I remember opening the front door and getting the boys out on one occasion, and Charles screamed his head off and said, oh, there's people out there, lots of people out there. So I said, oh, don't worry, Charles, come on, quickly, on we go. And we got out of their way, and I would take them down onto the bottom lawn there, we've probably seen.
Yes, yes.
And under the big tree, and we'd sort of space ourselves out so nobody else could get down there. They played down there.
Right.
Their little tractors and what have you.
Yes, so that you found a sort of a private part within
we
the
tried
castle.
to find.
Yes.
And the keep garden.
Which, I saw the keep garden.
Well, we started off there, we ended up there, I think, which was good. But I only realised rather stupidly that, of course, everyone in the King's Gallery was looking through the windows straight at us. So anyway, we finally ended up by being at Spetchley in the summer holidays, when they were out, children were out all the time.
Yes.
And we came back here when the castle was closed for the winter.
Right. So, which makes much more sense. Do you have, when you think of so many, decades here, what are some of your fondest memories of living, I mean, this is the longest inhabited castle in England by the same family.
That's right.
I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yes.
And still, you're, it's still continuing to be inhabited.
Well, I hope it will.
It will hit that
when
1,000
I'm
years.
gone, Charles must keep his toe in the door.
Yes.
But it's a lovely place to live in, actually. You're surrounded by lovely things, which I like. And I've always loved this place. And so it's just, to me, it's just home.
Yes. And it feels, this room, and even walking around in different parts that I've been, it feels
lived in, doesn't it? Yes.
Yes.
I know someone who used to come and babysit for me, and she said she always could smell what she called the Earl's cigars when she came in here.
Right.
Because this was the smoking room.
Ah.
Which nowadays nobody bothers with smoking.
No, exactly. We've been told to stay away.
Yes.
Right, so this is, she
outside,
could smell that.
And I expect in the furniture, because I've moved nothing.
Right.
So it's all as it was when he was here.
Right.
Our predecessor.
Right.
And I expect cigar smoke does stick in furniture and fabrics.
Yes,
and stuff,
of course.
Doesn't it?
Of course, absolutely. So,
but it's become much more not a home in the time I've been here, really.
Right.
you know, year by year.
More events.
It's more of a business,
Yes.
weddings, and everything, which you need, you see, to keep
Yes.
the expense of the roofing and all that sort of thing.
Well, I know.
And we had to rewire, 5 or more, for 7 years, something like that. So we had to vacate the castle completely.
When you were rewiring the
when
castle.
we were
Oh my goodness.
rewiring and new boilers and all
Yes.
that. So we went to a lovely little cottage on the estate while that was going on. But nobody knew sort of what to do because no one had been under the floorboards before.
Right.
And everything was a mass of wires and,
Yes.
you know, stuff. And the agent at the time, Rowley Bryan, he'd hardly been in the door. And he was supposed to find his way round down below here and everywhere, following all these
Yes.
cables and whatever.
Right. And it's you know, this is a castle. There's
Yes.
so many rooms and layers, and it's not just a quick job.
A quick fix.
No.
It isn't. You see, and the walls are so thick. A lot of the little room through there and the bathroom upstairs were dug out of the thickness of the walls by our predecessor,
Right.
who made sense because they're 14 feet in places.
Oh my.
The walls.
The
of
walls.
thickness.
Oh my.
I still can't get a handset telephone. that.
Because it can't go
They
through.
can't get through the walls,
It can't get through.
which I think is splendid in this day of modern technology,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And my mobile won't work and everything, so I've sort of thrown it away and I have my iPad. And if people want me, they have to email me.
It's brilliant.
Sometimes that goes off here, but
Yes.
I can take it down to the kitchen and then very often it'll click in again.
Yes.
You never know.
No, you never know. And even with
No.
these modern technologies and sort of modern amenities that we have, it's still the reality is that these historic houses, because of the fabric of the building, they have those 14-foot stone walls because they were built as fortresses.
This was a fortress,
Yes,
exactly that.
exactly.
Keeping the Welsh out, you
Yes.
see, from here.
Yes. Keeping the Welsh out.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, so
and a few others as well.
It's wonderful just for me personally to come and visit here because also we have a historic house that we run as well, and it's lived in and it's very homey, and that's what's so wonderful to
Yes,
be here.
and you're aware of the peculiarities.
Yes, and the difficulties, and because there are difficulties, it's, you know, we have this phrase that my husband and I always use, that it's no picnic running a historic house, even for the family that invented the sandwich, because
Yes.
so it takes time and patience and an understanding, and also I think a sympathetic view to make sure that we aren't over modernizing and overdoing it, so that it still retains with the features that we want to retain, but also becomes a comfortable family home. But yes, we're opening it up to the
also
public.
you've got the character.
Yes,
You know, I think it's a great shame to move everything.
I agree.
My husband was exactly the same. He hated change, as he always said, so nothing had to change.
Right,
And so I didn't bother.
right.
I mean, most people would have put in more modern kitchens or whatever, you know, but
Right, but
I'm
when
very happy without it.
yes, exactly. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you've been here for, as you said, over 50 years in the castle, right? And when I visit these historic houses, I always do wonder if there are ghosts. And the reason I ask is because I live in a historic house myself, and we've had several guests stay who, and in particular
Oh,
one room in
have
the
you?
house, say there's a ghost in this
In
room. Now,
there.
I've never experienced it beforehand,
Yes.
but I'm just curious.
well, you see, my husband, John, refused to believe in ghosts, absolute codswallopers. And I was actually not thinking about ghosts, but in fact, on 2 occasions, One, I was up on the top of the keep there, making up bed for the, we had the hump ball.
Right.
I have the hump ball here, and the band were going to stay. And I was making this bed, and all of a sudden I heard this footfall, and they had to come down stone steps. And I thought, well, it's not the dogs, because they never like coming down.
Right.
And I sort of half turned, and all of a sudden there was someone standing behind me. And you know when someone is close to you, don't you?
You can feel.
And yes, and it was male, and I suddenly felt all the hairs at the back of my neck going up. I've never had that happen, and I always wondered what people were talking about when they said the hair stand up on the back of your neck. And so I turned the opposite way to him, because he was on my right, and rushed out of the room. I absolutely just had time to switch the light off, because it was about 7:30 in the evening, and I had all these flight of stairs upstairs and across and down to here, and I just dived for the cigarette box. You know, I was absolutely rigid. It really, you know, it was really quite something.
Yes. Well, you could feel that energy.
I must have.
You must.
It was a man,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
I didn't at the time think it might have been the king, say.
Right.
Although I wouldn't
Edward
think it was
II,
Edward
yeah.
the second. Otherwise, one might have been more polite, you know. But anyway, no, that was quite a shock. And another time, I went out. One of the dogs wanted to go out, and as they do in the middle of the night or the early morning. Actually, it was about 6:30, and I brought it down and I let it out into the inner bailey. And I suddenly saw movement opposite where Josh's flat is, and there was 2 women sitting there. And there's a stone bench. If you go out, you'll see
Right.
a stone bench. And they were just sitting. I thought, how peculiar. Who's this come in now? And anyway, husband John was coming back in. He took the dogs. He got downstairs before me, was really the answer.
Right.
So he'd bring them back in. And he said, good God, what's wrong with you? You look as if you've seen a ghost. I thought, of course, that's what I've done. These 2 women, who were actually fairly modern, they were sort of 1900s, I suppose.
Right.
but-
Right.
And I mean, I know, I could tell you now what they were wearing and everything. And I think they were
Extraordinary.
probably coming in and cleaning or
Right.
something.
Yes.
And they got there early, so
Right.
they sat and were sitting on there. But you know, I think I mean, I'm so empty-headed. Things can come into your
Yes.
thinking, can't they, if you're
Well, they
with
can,
a
but
vacant enough head. And it just, because I wasn't looking for anything.
No, of
So,
course not. Of course not. But I think when you have that sort of, you know, a poltergeist moment or paranormal, you feel that energy.
Yes, must be.
Yes,
It's,
absolutely. Well, that is, I believe that. I will tell you that. Yeah.
Well,
I do
you know,
believe in ghosts.
I wouldn't make it up.
No.
How could I make it up?
Exactly.
And I think the spirits, after all, this is quite old, and spirits are under the floorboards or wherever you like, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I mean, they find a skeleton under the great hall floor when that had to be lifted, the stone.
Right. Oh, my.
And so I suppose if you died in those very early days, they'd just put you under the rubble,
Right.
wouldn't they?
Yes.
They didn't bother with burial.
With burials, no. How
So
extraordinary.
that's all I can tell you. Really,
Well, those-
about my
well, those are
experience with
Two
ghosts.
very brilliant ghost stories. Now,
Yes.
I also do need to ask, because whilst being here, I discovered the 8th Earl, I know from Charles and also speaking to Josh, has done quite a lot of work here, from the roof to
Huge
the
lot.
huge, extraordinary amount. And I also found out that his second wife was American. Is that right?
Molly.
Mo-
It was a pain in the neck. I shouldn't say that, actually.
She's dead, so I think
Yes,
it's
she's
okay.
very dead. And when we had to go, she was American, as you say.
Right.
I don't want to be rude about
No,
your race.
no.
But
I won't take any of it. Listen, we've had a couple of people sort of a couple of women ruffle some feathers in the past. So I know, and remember, the Americans sort of came over during the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century, and did kind of ruffle up the historic houses.
I know, because the English, well, actually the British, were looking for rich wives.
Yes. So was Molly a rich?
Yes, very. She was a Lowell from Boston.
Yes.
The big family there.
Yes, they are.
And she, I think, had got rid of her first husband, who was called Lloyd.
Right.
And I don't know if he died, or what happened to him, I don't know. But anyway, he married the last, as she always calls him.
Right.
In the thing she's written, the last Earl and all this. And married him. We had to go and meet her.
Oh, you met her?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I only the once. John met her quite a few times as a little
right.
boy, as he was growing up. And probably, in fact, he met her when Lord Berkeley was still alive.
Okay.
And they were living here. But I didn't meet her till after he died. And we had to pay for her to stay at Claridge's for, I think it was a month, every year after he died.
Oh
that was in the Book of Rules, because she's not coming here. She wasn't going to come here.
Right.
Well, she couldn't with us, because we didn't know her. So
yes.
The sort of plan was that we gave her a month's holiday or whatever at Claridge's every year.
Oh my goodness.
So we went there once, had tea with her. We were bidden for tea. And I thought, well, it'd be civil, I said, well, do come and stay if you're ever down in Gloucestershire or anything. Come and stay, she said. The only way you'll get me back there is feet first. And that was exactly what happened. She came in her coffin.
No. Oh my goodness.
Yes. I think it's hilarious, but she had to be re-coffined because the coffin, American coffin, and probably lots of other coffins are that shape. Ours, as you know, go like that.
Yes.
So they flew her over from America, and then we had to re-coffin her.
No.
We actually made the coffin at the State Yard here with
Right.
Berkeley oak, beautiful coffin.
Yes.
We had a little mass for her in the chapel here.
Yes.
The castle has a
I
chapel up
visited.
in the keep. Did Charles take you there?
The yes, I did. Yes.
The Catholic one. Well, they both were at
Right, yes.
one time. The other one's now the morning room.
Right.
But the old one in the keep we used up until not very long ago. The priest couldn't make the stairs, so we had to stop. But anyway, we had that there, and she had all these sort of rather rare, important friends staying.
Right.
And then we plonked her in the mausoleum at her request.
Oh. Oh my
She
goodness.
wrote that here lies my husband, the last Earl of Berkeley, 8th and last Earl of Berkeley. She was determined there wasn't going to be a follow-up. And his wife, Mary, whatever, and that was her.
That was her.
Her bit, yeah.
Oh, so that's where she is, at the
Yes.
mausoleum. Oh my goodness.
Whether we wrote that on her tombstone, I'm not sure. I really don't know.
So let me just ask a little bit more about Molly. So she did come from a wealthy family.
Yes,
And then
very much
was
so.
it her money that helped?
Yes. Because Lord Berkeley, well, he had plenty of money, but, doing a house up wasn't how he would look upon spending it.
Right.
Much more important, hunting and all that sort of stuff,
Yes.
For his pleasure and his Rolls Royce and all this.
Yes.
But she wasn't very nice to him.
Right, she wasn't. And
No.
they didn't have children, obviously.
No,
That's why
well,
he's
I
the-
think they were probably both too old. Well,
Right,
she was.
right. So she wasn't. No. So was she well liked around the area?
No. I've got a bicycle.
Do you?
Yes. And I bet you if I had it looked at, it would go on an antiques thing.
Absolutely.
It would fetch quite a lot of money. You know, it's got the gold edging around the mudguards and all this sort of thing.
Fantastic.
Yes, it's a nice one. I used it during Foot and Mouth. You know, we
Yes,
had
I
a
remember,
bad
of course.
dose of it
Yes,
all
yes.
those years
ago. Yes.
The basket, I think, unfortunately, has fallen to bits. There was a little wicker basket on
Right.
the front. But apart from getting the wheels sorted, it's still perfectly rideable.
Right. Wow,
Yes.
fantastic. But
So-
it's interesting that you mentioned the Claridge's link, just because I'm doing research right now on my husband's great-grandmother, who was an American. She was
Oh, right.
all right.
So-
And, she has lots of letters, archives, and that I need to rummage through.
Gosh.
But interestingly enough, many of the letters I've come across is her at Claridge's.
Yes.
Spending, was that a thing, staying there for a time?
I think so. You see, a lot of rich people do end up their last days, 'cause after all, you're very well looked after.
Yes.
And what a comfy place to be,
Yes.
and the fireplaces in the bedrooms and all this sort of thing, you know.
And then
just-
you're looked after.
Yes.
So maybe that.
I mean, if you've got the money, why not, instead of going into a home?
So I will have to do some, that's
Yes.
exactly right. I will have to do some research and
Yeah.
come back to you just to see if they had any
Yes.
overlap.
Yes.
Because Molly, when was Molly's years then?
Christmas.
Alberta died in 1951, and I was just thinking, and the eighth
Molly,
Earl
yeah.
died in 1942.
Yeah, and she didn't die until, because the boys were both born. So
Right.
it was 70-something. Charles born in 68, Henry
Right.
69.
Right,
And they came to the church service, so they weren't in arms.
right. Okay.
So,
So yes,
you know, she's fairly recent.
she is.
Can't remember how old she was.
No, but she possibly would have had that overlap.
Yes,
my
with your-
husband's-
yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Because, as you said, was it after the 8th Earl died, she left the castle?
Yes, immediately.
Immediately. Oh, there's definitely some crossover there. I'm
Yes.
going to find out and see what Alberta says
Yes.
about Molly.
Yes, do.
And
Be
did
very
she use her
interesting.
title? Would she use her
Oh,
title?
good God, yes.
Oh,
Loved it, and was determined that there wasn't going to be another countess. You see, because they died no children, my father-in-law took to the House of Lords, could he reclaim the title?
right, yes.
And they said yes, he could. So actually she was totally wrong. He need not have been the last, and she need not have been the last countess.
Yes.
But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, who cares really?
Right.
My father-in-law said no, he said, I'm not going to bother, it'll put sixpence on my bills.
But-
Sixpence.
Yes.
And so he dropped the case.
So you drop, right. Yes.
And John, husband, you know, just used to say, well, what's wrong in being Mr.?
Gosh,
Well-
thank you so
No,
much.
that's rather interesting, isn't it?
It is.
A connection.
Yes, it is. Thank you for your time
No,
and for
not a
just these
bit.
wonderful, memories and
Well,
it's
I
been
haven't
brilliant.
got too many,
Yes, you do.
unfortunately. I wasn't here long enough, you know. But,
Well, 50 odd years is quite some time.
Well, it feels to me like a lifetime.
Yes.
I know you must feel the same.
Yes. I've spent some time at Berkeley Castle already. It's been actually, I have to tell you, being the American in me, I had to really tell myself over and over again that it's not Berkeley Castle, that it's Berkeley Castle. I'm just going to throw that in there. But I've come around to Berkeley Castle. But I spent some time with Charles. It's fantastic. But of course, you're doing something that I would love to do, and that's not to live inside the castle because it is open to the public, but you have your own space here. So how did that come to be? How have you made that work?
Well, when Charles and I married, Charles's parents were in the castle. Charles's mother is still in the castle, and she's very happy in there. It's a very warm, you've been there, it's very warm and cozy. It's a lovely place to live. It's a very safe place to live. So it was never going to be for us for the time being. But we also, we have quite a collection of animals and some quite large dogs, which we love. And with the castle open to the public so much, I think it's open 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And for a lot of the year, and there's lots of weddings as well, for us to be going in and out, because you can't just open the door and let them into the garden.
Right.
Because we have inner baileys and outer baileys and great big doors and locks and keys and things, because it's
a maze.
A proper castle.
Yes.
So it's a real thing to get the dogs in and out without terrorising people. I mean, they're friendly dogs, but they look imposing. So it's just not suitable. And also, poor Charles, when he married me, he did get this menagerie, which included horses and as well.
Yeah.
And there are kennels, hunt kennels near the castle, which have stables, but they're not for my horses. They're for hunt horses.
Right.
And so yes, living where we are now, we have a barn with internal stables. We have loads of space, and we're just spoilt rotten with places for the horses and the dogs to roam free.
Right, and you have the most spectacular view. I mean, driving up here, I was just like, oh, this is brilliant. But before I get into the horses, because of course I want to ask about that, is this house though, how, when I drove up, is I couldn't quite place it, you know what I mean? Because it's sort of up on a hill, beautiful, landscape surrounding it. How long has it been here? What's the history of this house?
And when you look at it, it looks like the most insane place to build a house, because you get hit by all the weather all year round. And I mean, it is hilarious when the storms hit and we just sort of batten down the hatches. But it was not built as a sort of family home. It was built actually originally as a hunting lodge.
Okay.
They believe, I mean, people have studied it, they believe some of it was started in the 1300s. There's some very old stonework, and then bits were added, bits fell down, other bits were added. So it started in the 1300s, and it's had bits and pieces done to it. I mean, it's got some castellation put on.
I saw that's why I couldn't place it. I didn't know when I
Charles obviously loves to live in a castle, so he had to have a bit of castellation. No, the castellation's quite old, but it was built as a hunting lodge for hunting deer. And I mean, who knows? Maybe Elizabeth I was in this one,
right?
Because I mean, she came to hunt deer at Berkeley, and I think she stayed for a little longer than anyone thought she would and killed most of the deer, but she may have set foot in this place as well. I mean, it has probably got a hell of a history, and there are other stories of when there was a great big there was a battle between the poachers and the gamekeepers, resulting in some poachers getting captured and then sent to Australia. And I think this building was part of that.
Right.
I think it's got its own little cheeky history.
Yeah, brilliant history. So then, when did you move here, and when did you move here?
The last tenants were farmers, and I mean, poor them, the whole thing was sort of falling down around them, and they were very hysterical staying here. I think not many people would. There was no electrics. They had occasionally, I think they had a generator if they wanted a bit of light, or sometimes people, they were great fun, this couple, and people would come up here after hunting and have some whiskey.
Fantastic.
And had some big dogs, and when they thought they'd had enough whiskey and needed to go home, they couldn't get out of the house because the dogs wouldn't let them. So there were a lot of people who have some very funny stories to say about this place. And there's also no running water.
So like roughing it.
Proper roughing it.
Fantastic.
There was a little wood burner. And I mean, we are sitting here all cozy with underfloor heating.
So warm, thank
living
you.
The life of right. But no, I mean, the Troughtons were an incredibly brave couple, but I think they also rather loved it up here in some way. And then when Rose Troughton moved out, it became just derelict, and there was trees growing through where we're sitting now.
No.
This wall, I think, was about to come down. There was sort of falling down pig pens. I mean, it was a ruin.
Right. And
it was virtually about to be razed to the ground. And someone made the brave decision, thought, actually, let's make it a holiday let.
Okay.
Which probably would have been amazing.
Yes.
But Charles and I saw this happening, and we thought, actually, maybe we could just get in there first.
Right.
And we made the decision, and it was the most exciting thing we could have done, because to live here is just, we feel like the luckiest people alive with this view.
It's magical. Like I said, when I drove up here, I just thought, is that, and I didn't know, I was just sort of driving blindly, and I was like, if this is where they live, I'm going to be properly envious.
But it's still slightly chaos. We've only been here a couple of years, and as I said, it was a ruin, and we're still having some problems with water coming through the walls. We need to sort out a few leakage issues, and we have to create a garden because there was no garden. It was just chaos, and we're getting there.
Yeah.
And growing the vegetables, and got a greenhouse now, and fencing some paddocks for the horses, but it takes time to do these things.
Yeah, well, it takes time to build a home. So now you've mentioned horses. So I'm quite fascinated to have this conversation with you in particular because, a lot of the homeowners that I do meet, many of the ladies of the houses, the men, they're very, very involved, which is brilliant. And I think that we have a bit of a similarity because we run a historic house as well, but I've had my own career the entire time I've been, married to my husband for over 2 decades now. And for me, it's very satisfying. That was the choice that I decided to make. I'm now involving myself definitely more and more. For me, it's the archive, but you have had quite a career. I mean, listen, I do know about you. I mean, you are, can I say, you are a medalist at the Olympics, and you are one of the best. And listen, I'm not a horse person, so, tell me just a little bit about your career and where you are now with it.
I think the peak of my career was around the years when Charles and I married. And I think since then I've been reducing in numbers. I think, I'm getting older, and so every year, I seem to be 1 horse less.
Right.
And I'm now down to 2.
Right.
And they're 2 lovely horses, and I'm not out there competing all the time like I used to, because I think, as you get older, I want to do more things to help Charles with the castle and with projects that are going on there. I can't completely let go because I do all horses are lovely, but competition horses, well-trained horses, I just love riding a lovely horse, and I've got 2. I mean, they're in a syndicate.
Yes.
I think 1 horse is owned by 5 people and 1 horse is owned by 4 people, and I own a little bit of that. I have an 1/8 of each horse. And I just love riding lovely horses, and I think when the love is completely gone, or I lose my nerve, I think that is the time to completely pull the plug.
Right.
I think Charles would be quite keen if I pulled the plug soon.
And Charles was explaining to me also, so you married in 2009, is that right?
Yes.
And then you had, that, as you said, that was the height of your career, because you had the 2008 Beijing Olympics.
Yes.
And you had a bronze medal in that. Fantastic. So that
the wrong colour.
It's the right color. All medals.
At least we got something.
Yeah. But and that was sort of you're saying that's the height of your career. And then after that, you married Charles. When you knew about sort of Berkeley Castle, this was going to be where you were, one day going to end up. I mean, for me, it felt a bit daunting. And had a career, but also I'm the American, so I was like, oh, what? But did you feel that same sort of, I guess, emotion inside, like? Or did you kind of feel like, I'm going to separate the 2 for now? I'm going to carry on with my career.
Yes, very much so. I knew that Charles and the castle, they have an incredibly good team working. They have a very good system. Everything runs like a well-oiled machine. And yes, there's always going to be evolution of that, new things happening. And I knew Charles always said that he would love me to get involved doing whatever interested me. And we do have a lot of talks about it, what does interest me. I'm very fond of the garden side of it.
Yeah.
And Berkeley does have a beautiful garden, very different from Spetchley, the other Berkeley house. Spetchley's a proper plantsman's garden. Berkeley's, it's I think more unique in the way that it's built on terraces, and I think it's rather a wonderful garden. So I would like to get more involved with that. And they've also got a new project with a kitchen garden.
Right.
And there's a new restaurant being built. And I think we want to try and have a really good project with the kitchen garden. Maybe also try and encourage a little bit of I'd love to have a little farmer's market going on. Start small, see what the farmers in the area have got, would like to to sell.
Yes.
And see where we go from there. I mean, we've got various friends who sell meat,
Well,
drinks,
yes.
cheeses and things in the area, and see if they want to, if it's a thing that interests them. But I'd love it because we could just do with one in the area.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be quite fun. I know the one in Stroud is very popular.
Right.
And if we can get a bit of that down here and just go, I love bringing also the farmers into everything around the estate, whether they're estate farmers or other farmers. It's a community, and I just really want there to be an involvement. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing, you know, the kitchen garden and everything else, and the new restaurant starting to take form, and then going on a trip around all the farms and having a chat and saying, you know, hey, what have you got? What do you want to do with this?
Yes, and it's interesting because you mentioned that in particular community, because I always think of these houses and these estates were built for, if you think the community, right? Everything was just community focused, and then the Industrial Revolution hit, and it was all about importing, and the Victorians came in as well. How can I get the most exotic fruits, and now we're shifting back to local community, keeping it, so it doesn't have to travel 8,000 miles to get that frozen blueberry off the plane. But I grow what's local, seasonal here for the time, and I think people are definitely, I am for sure, looking at ways that their carbon footprint is obviously less, and eating locally, and that's really becoming really important. So the community, it's almost as if it's coming back again.
Completely.
In favor.
Absolutely, and I think that is very much where we're living at the moment. And this farm is actually this is a 300-acre farm, and it's always been grass. But what we want to do with this place is to try and have it. It's not going to be rewilded. It's too small an area, but I think it's going to be much more sustainable.
Yes.
Farming. So you cut the grass at a later date. You cut hedges at a later date when you need to. Leave some hedges wild, but definitely leave the grass until all the ground nesting birds have fledged, things like that.
Yes.
We want to put a lot of trees in. We're going to do some quite big wildflower areas, which is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it's so important for the wildlife. The bird song we hear in the mornings here is crazy. The dawn chorus, you just lie there.
Yeah.
It's quite loud. It's like, sometimes, guys, it's really early. Do you have to? There's one. I need to find out what bird it is because I don't recognise it, and it just makes racket, but you have to chuckle.
Right.
Because it's so noisy, the dawn chorus is brilliant.
Yeah, and it's about bringing the invertebrate back, and because I remember growing up and sort of driving down motorways in America, and
your
windscreen filled with bugs, and that's no longer the case. So these are really important things. Well, no, it's just interesting and fascinating to hear that you, very much like me, I'm just now starting to get much more involved in the estate. For me, and it's about finding, I've had conversations with Luke before about, he's like, well, what are you interested in? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not really sure right now, but I'm focused on my career, but I'm sure it will come to me. And it sort of came, over the past couple of years, but definitely the archive is what I'm most interested about, I think, in the work that I'll potentially do in the house is the archive.
Really brilliant.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
And we do have a wonderful garden, and I just don't have a green thumb, and I'm not sure I'm ever going to have a green thumb. So you heard it here first. So I'm just putting that out there. But, and I've mentioned that, my mother-in-law is, she's all about you walk through the garden with her and she knows every single plant and their name in Latin,
Yes.
It's extraordinary. I will never get to that level.
My father-in-law, he was the same. He knew every single plant and all the Latin names. And I know some plants. I'm not in anywhere near his league. He was the real deal. But I'm going to I have promised Charles, and I actually really want to go and do a gardening course at some point, sooner rather than later.
Yes.
And I've actually got enough time for it now that I've cut down on the horses.
Yes.
And no, I'd love to just get more knowledgeable, so I can just put something more into it that way.
Yeah, no.
I did a degree in zoology with biological papers as well.
Oh my goodness.
Not biological papers, papers on higher plants, and so.
Okay, so
somewhere in there. I have to find it, filter through the cobwebs, but
right. And the interest is there then.
Very much so.
Yeah,
I was always into science.
It's fantastic. Now, and I am going to ask you sort of the $1,000,000 question. Do you think that there will ever be a time that you will move to the castle? I mean, I look at Mapperton and I think, oh, I wonder if there's a time that we can do what you and Charles have done here, where you're running it as a business, opening up to the public and enjoying it and being very grateful, but then having that sort of step away is, I feel, for us, we don't have that. It's like a boundary, and the boundary can get very much blurred when you're living in the house.
I mean, we're very aware that one of the sort of USPs of Berkeley is the fact that it has been lived in by the same family since the day it was started.
Nearly 900 years. Incredible.
And we don't want to be the ones to break that chain. I don't ever see us living in it 24/7,
right?
Because of the animal factor.
Yes,
we're never going to be without animals.
Right,
and our daughter Mary, she has ponies. She's convinced she wants to ride.
Right.
And it's much easier to be out in the middle of nowhere when you've got socking great dogs floating around.
Right.
And
ponies,
lovely,
by the way.
They are brilliant. But I do know that, I mean, Charles and we'd love to retain a small area where we can stay. And I'll do whatever he sees fit. But I know, both of us do love just being able to take a step back.
Yes.
And it's almost like leaving the job slightly.
Yeah, well,
Going home
and it
from
is.
work.
Because like I said, those lines can get very blurred, and that you're living at the place where you work. And so where is the boundary, and where do you find that sacred space that you do need, as an individual, as a couple, and that can be tricky. But hearing it from me first.
But also, I mean, the castle is shut to the public for a few months over the winter.
Yes.
So there may be a degree of living in it.
Yes, exactly.
A small area.
Yeah, and we find, and interestingly enough, we do find that I think we're open and closed about the same time that you are, for April to October. Is that, and it went open and then closed November, December, Jan, and Feb. And we do find those 4 months, a real opportunity just to be like, okay, and breathe.
Yes.
And it becomes more of a feeling of a home.
Yes.
During those 4 months, which is lovely.
Absolutely, and Berkeley, considering how cold and dank it would have been once upon a time, as a proper, fortified castle, keep an eye on the Welsh, wasn't it?
Yes.
But now it is. I think the last Earl put a lot of money into it to make it an incredibly cozy place that it is, and it's a lovely place to stay, and to look out of the windows and see around you, and these wonderful, incredibly thick walls, and it's an absolute treat to stay there.
It is, and as Charles said to me, you are, as a family, you're doing parties there or events or whatever it is, you are using it.
Yes.
And your mother-in-law